Did I not see him? Is it still on? Yes. Okay, because I heard the way it's cutting out. Hello?
Hello?
Hello? I need to hear the meeting today.
Okay, the meeting hasn't started, so
I know. I just need to know, will they see me, and is the public allowed to ask questions?
if you signed up for public comment, yes.
I don't know if I did. Okay, I would really like to listen to this meeting, and I will contact the police afterwards. Thank you, but I will be there online, so I guess I just stay. Do I just stay on the phone?
Who are we speaking with?
You are speaking with Deborah Anderson. Who am I speaking with?
Chief Adrian Crispin.
Who?
Chief of Police Adrian Crispin.
Oh, Adrian, I need to talk to you. Adrian, I have all the proof that will show who put her in that hole. They know. You got a real crooked cop there. His name's Detective Salazar. He's protecting the two men. I have all the proof you need. He yelled at me. He called me to try to tell me that he tried to prove me crazy. And
I think we could, you can call me and we could talk about this.
Oh, talk about it, sir. I'm bringing that. No. That ain't happening. We can talk. I would like to see you on Monday. But we are going to, her family and I are going to file a major complaint. I worked for a lawyer for years against this police department and against this city with the state attorney general. Miss Stansberry is coming out. And she will go down there. She's already got the appointment. I got the proof. Now, Salazar has called me. He's lied so many times. You know, he's protecting these two men. And I don't get, and when me and you sit down together, I'm going to show you a picture that the coroner sent of the blanket. And then I'm going to show you a picture of the blanket itself. It belonged to me.
Okay.
Somebody muted her.
No, I didn't.
Hi, Mary Helen.
Hi, Adrian.
Hello? Can you hear me?
You could hear their conversation, but they're not hearing you.
You're not hearing me, right?
I hear you.
We can hear you.
Chief Crispin, have you heard from Roy if he'll be joining us today?
I have not heard from him. I know he was at the council meeting last night. He said, I'll see you tomorrow. So.
Okay, we'll go ahead and give him a few more minutes if that's okay with everybody. I know with Mary Helen and Lee here and myself, we do have a quorum, but let's go ahead and give him a few minutes to see if he'll join us, if that's okay with everyone.
It's fine with me.
Joe Whiteman said yesterday that he was going to be joining today.
We'll give them a few minutes to get on.
Okay.
Hello, Joe.
Hey, Lee, is it just you and me?
No, we've got the chief here. We've got Kimberly Blay and MH Baber. Okay.
Okay.
And others.
Chief Crispin and others, is it okay? I can go ahead and start the meeting in the interest of time. I don't know if we have any members from the community who will be joining us and would like to participate. But if it's okay with everybody, let's go ahead and start the meeting. And then if Roy joins us, I will happily turn over chairing the meeting to him. How does that sound?
That sounds fine.
Wonderful.
All right, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Alexis, would you please take roll call for us?
Yes. So Chief Adrian Crispin, Joseph Whitman,
Here.
Mary Helen,
Looks like she just dropped off.
yeah, I can see you, just can't hear you.
She's muted.
Alrighty, so thank you. Lee Einer,
Present.
Roy Montalban, not present, and Kimberly Blea.
Present.
Thank you.
So I apologize. My son is in the other room having a fit, but I see Roy joined us. And Roy, welcome. I'll go ahead and turn over chairing the meeting to you. We're on item 3, approval of the agenda. And we see you, but you are muted.
Oh,
Roy, we still can't hear you. We show that you're unmuted and your mouth is moving, but we can't hear you.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize for being late to the meeting. I couldn't find the actual Google link to it. So anyway, but I'm here. So let me just pull up. Okay, so we are on the approval of the agenda, correct? Is that what you said?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So have you all had a chance to look at this? Do we have any comments or objections to the agenda as posted? No? Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye and raise your hand.
Roy, can I make a motion to approve the
Oh,
agenda?
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry, Kimberly. Yes,
Sure. I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
I'm going to second it.
Aye.
Sounds like a plan. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. So, item 4, public input. Do we have public attendees? I see that we have at least, it looks like a couple. Is there anyone who has specific items for public input?
We do have somebody on here, it looks like, with just displaying phone number, California area code. She was speaking a little bit ago.
619 area code? Did you have a... No? And we have a Loretta Martin?
She's with the city.
Okay. Okay, last call for public input. Does the caller with the 619 area code have any public input?
She's muted. I don't know if that's on her end.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's move on to the approval of the minutes. We'll come back to this caller. So, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as posted? Anyone?
So moved.
in my case, not the whole phone number.
Oh, hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes, we can hear you now. We're actually right in the middle of approving the minutes. We'll come right back
I understand. I can hear you. I just didn't, you couldn't hear me.
Okay, good. Because if you have public input,
Deborah Anderson.
we'll come right back to that. All
Thank
right.
you.
You bet. Do we have a second on the approval of the minutes as posted?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any,
I know. I feel better when you're sitting.
yeah, you might actually, excuse me, area code 619, you might want to mute for a minute so that we can approve the minutes and we'll come right back to you. Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes as posted?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Nope. Okay. The minutes as posted are approved. Okay, so let's go back to public input. So caller with the 619 area code, if you could unmute, did you have any public comments for us? Hello? Can you hear us? Area code 619 caller, do you have any public input? Okay, I'll tell you what, once again, let's, just for the purpose of
Can you
this.
hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, I do have public input. I just want to discuss what Chief Preston said in the paper, that he doesn't want anybody from the public to give information. He doesn't know. He told the sister, I'm very much in contact with her. She's coming out. We're filing a complaint, her whole family, me, and other people against the police department with the state attorney general. I did not believe what she told me, that the Chief Crespin said those things to her. But guess what? It came out in the paper the next day. He says he doesn't want any information from the public. But he told her, well, I'm not up with the case or anything, and I'll call you back. Well, Miss Stansberry, who is Shauna Story's sister, and we're going together. I have the proof. I've been telling your detective Salazar, I have proof. And he absolutely screams at me. He calls me. He tries to make me sound crazy. I'm a 70-year-old Christian woman. I should not know this information, but I know. And that was my blanket, my tarp, and my wire, and my shovel. But my husband, who is one of the worst men in town, runs with Esteban Gutierrez. My husband's name is Harold Anderson. Those came from his trailer. He was parked right behind that house. And they don't have, that's my trailer, by the way, they don't have a toilet in there. So your toilet was full of crap. I'm sure it belongs to those two men. Well, when the body started smelling, they moved over behind Zuni, right up against the fence. Salazar had the nerve. He's yelling at me continually. There's no blanket. He goes, how would you know what baling wire is? I worked in a cotton gin. I bought that whole row. Hell has 2 rows of different kinds of wire in that trailer. Finally, Salazar told me they were parked on private property. He was sure, and I know it wasn't. So I waited a couple of weeks because I don't want to die. I'm in danger from my own husband. So I waited a couple of weeks, and I called the city. They towed it all that day. Those men make every kind of drug, especially heroin. They've been arrested. They've been, it was when in 2019, suddenly they're out within hours. The other man escapes. When I called to try to give information, and I've only did it once before, I'm called. I actually hear them on the radio call me crazy Deborah Anderson. And I'm here to tell you, son, I don't have a crazy bone in my body. Salazar is protecting those 2 men no matter what. And I don't know why, but I got the proof. I have the blanket, and we are going to go straight to the state attorney general. And if you think I'm against cops, I got 2 cops in my family. I wish we had more, but I hate corrupt cops. Now, my nephew worked for LAPD homicide. I called his mother. She's my ex-sister-in-law, to see, and he's retired, and to have her call him. My nephew tells me that anybody looking to solve a murder that doesn't want to hear from the public at all, as Crespin said, at all, then he's not, you could care less about that. The public, if you were not there when that body was stuck in that hole, and then you need to hear from the public. And this is a lady, I don't even want to get involved with this. I have to take anxiety meds over worrying about whether I'm going to die. I hide out from my husband. I know, and this has nothing to do with my anger at him. It has to do with what I know. And God will not let me, even though getting him arrested will cut my income way down. I will probably have to go home to California. But I would rather lose my income than to know that demonic, those two demonics, Esteban's 10 times worse than my own man, are, in jail. And I've already filed complaints about the abuse, and they won't take me serious. Now, my husband had 2 men try to run. I can't believe it. They had women's underwear on. They had crap in their pants, and they jacked off on my legs. They were holding me together. They even on a bench, and they tried to wrap my oxygen hose around my neck. I begged my husband. He lived next door. Please help me. What do you want me to do about it? So anyway, it happened again an hour later. And then when I went out the third time, the one guy sitting about, I'd say 10 yards. And I just walked up to him with my gun and I hit him in the head so hard. And then he got scared. Well, after it was all over, after the other guy tried to attack me from the back with his crap in his pants, runs across the parking lot, dropping his crap. And then, I just can't believe they even put a hole against my front door that if I opened the door, it would have hit me in the head.
Okay,
The lady that finally
I think it sounds like you have a lot of details that might be relevant to some.
You bet I do.
So I think that what we can do is rather than go into all this detail on this call, we will make sure that that your story gets heard and the details get recorded.
Oh, I will come down there on Monday. If I can't talk to Crespin and show him the proof, if I cannot talk to the mayor or the commissioner, I've worked for a lawyer for years. My job was strictly discovery. I've got a very analytical mind. And I'm going to or I will sue you. It's plain and simple. And I like Mr. Crespin. He was new. I thought things are going to change. And the first thing he says is, I don't want to hear from the public on this. Well, if he wasn't there, he'd better hear from somebody. I have the proof. I've been telling them. And Salazar claimed that he was Apodaca. He told me that 3 different times. So he calls me. And he has to admit to me it was him all along I was talking to.
Okay, ma'am,
Anderson.
This forum may not be the best or ideal.
I'm sure it's not because it's public.
Details.
But I can guarantee you her family will be here in 2 weeks. Then we're
Ms.
going
Anderson.
down to the state attorney general. Things have got to change.
Ms. Anderson, this is the chief.
Then you better listen to me.
Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from my apartment here in Las Vegas.
Okay.
My number is a 619 because I'm old and I'm broke and my daughter pays my phone bill.
Okay.
And it's out of San Diego.
So they'll be coming in next week, the Shauna Story
She
family?
told me yesterday on the phone she'd be here in 2 weeks. She's got an appointment with the state attorney general. She's coming by here. I'm going to give her the proof I have. She would like for me to go, but my health, it just depends on what my health is that day.
All right. We'll address that with her when she comes, and we'll sit down with her and speak with her.
You can do that. You're going to speak with me, and I'm filing a brief with the state attorney general. And sir, I want you to know, if you want a pro-police woman, it's me. But I hate corruption.
But I think you need. I think you need to read that paper again. I never said I didn't want information from the public.
Yes, you did.
I did not.
You read it again. Read it to me.
I did not say that. I would never.
Yeah,
Okay,
you did say that.
We're
Or
not
the
gonna,
paper said that you said that. But I didn't believe it. When Katrina told me you said those things to her, that you never knew about the case, but you were going to look into it and get back to her, that's when you put that in the paper. You don't want to hear from the public, because I didn't believe her. I could not imagine a chief of police telling someone that's asking questions. This woman is on medication. She's so nervous. I am too. I'm afraid of my husband. But you ask Lozano, he thinks my husband is a coward, but my husband is sitting men on me
okay,
to
Miss
ruin
Anderson,
me.
Miss Anderson, we'll continue this, when,
We'll continue this on Monday.
okay,
I'm not waiting any longer.
all right then. You have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, well, I think that,
Alexis, can you mute her?
Yes.
okay, well, I think that the next item on the agenda is kind of apropos, which is how to facilitate citizen reporting of a crime. So on that note, I think that obviously this caller feels very strongly about getting some information across to the police department. And I think that, in future cases with other individuals, having good, a variety of methods to do that so that people can be heard is important. And I know in this case, she will be heard. So obviously calling in to this public meeting is one way to, have her voice heard and recorded. But as we move on to the next item, which again is a business item, how to facilitate citizen reporting of crime. We had a little bit of discussion about this in prior calls, and I know that we also had another public comment from Pat Lehan about some frustrations in this area. So why don't we just open this up for discussion? Chief, I don't know if you had specific thoughts that you wanted to discuss regarding this. I know that I had a few thoughts, and so why don't we just have a discussion about this and see what we can arrive at.
So I
can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So our common practice that we have here is the person who's filing the complaint will come in and do a citizen's complaint form that we have. This complaint form shows the name of the person that's filing the complaint if they want. Also, then it has a narrative where they can put down what complaint they're filing against and to what officer. So it's a basic complaint form, but also it's very detailed for a complaint to be filed. I don't know if, these complaints that come in, we look at them and we assign them to a commander or to our internal affairs if it needs to go to internal affairs. So that's how we deal with our citizens' complaints. Most complaints that come in, we can address ourselves. So I have my deputy chief or the major or the commander address them right away. That way they're not sitting in a file waiting to be addressed. So we address them as soon as we get them. We really if you're going to file a complaint against an officer, we believe that we need to make sure that we have, so now like we have our cameras on all the time when we're dealing with people, we could bring in that citizen or we can look at that camera footage and say that didn't happen. So we have those tools now to help us, say, yes, that did happen or no, that didn't happen. And that's how we're addressing it now. So we do have a citizens complaint form out there. They pick it up here at the police department. I don't, a lot of people, you have said that a lot of people are afraid to come to the police department to pick up a complaint form. That's been common practice for them to come and pick it up here. Now, if we can find different locations to place them in, we just don't want 100 complaint forms to come in because they saw it at a store or at a different place, location, and they fill it out and then they send it in with no merit to it. So, that's why we have them in a controlled location, which is the Las Vegas Police Department.
Is there a way, there's no way then for somebody to complete a complaint online?
Not yet. We were asking the 311 app so it could be put in there, and that's one of my goals, is to have it put in the 311 app. And we're also trying to put it on our website.
I know that one of the suggestions I think Pat Lee had made was also putting these forms like in our libraries. Do you have any thoughts on that, Chief?
Well, like I said, I think if we were to put them out in different locations, these complaint forms would come back to us without no merit of a complaint. And that's what I don't want, it's just, we put them out there and then, how people fill things out and then send it to wherever, to our location or bring it in. So that's why they're in a controlled environment, which is here at the police department. They pick it up from our secretary and then they bring it back to us.
Okay, so it's a little bit more of a formalized procedure.
Right, because we also like to get him notarized sometimes. It just depends.
Right, that makes sense. So you're referring specifically right now to complaints against specific police officers. So that complaint form, if they walk in the door at the police department, they can just request that. You said earlier that they could identify themselves or not. So the person who's filing the complaint has the option of filing it anonymously. Is that correct?
Yeah, they do, but we like them to put their name on it so we can contact them and say, yes, did this happen or did it not? So we're trying to sustain it or unbind it at that point.
I have a question. Chief Crispin and others, do you have somebody who is a contact person or a point person in which handles the receipt of these complaints? Because I understand your concerns as it relates to wanting to be able to do your due diligence in receiving these complaints and providing, at the same time, balancing that with providing opportunity for members of the community to access and be able to do that, right? So it's a balanced approach. But do you have somebody within the police department that's identified who kind of could help community members navigate these types of reports and just, what is needed? So there is a person or a couple people, so to speak, that are identified as such. Does that exist? And if not, is that something you might think about?
Our front office admin secretary is the point of contact. So she passes them out or would be my secretary also, Alexis. So we have different people that point of contacts that they can make contact with. Usually when someone comes in with a citizen's complaint, it's either the major or deputy chief or the commander will look at it right away and we'll meet with that person and we'll try to come to a resolution before it gets any further than it needs to go. So sometimes we hear them out, they'll call us on the phone and we hear their complaint and we address it for them. Or, we'll address the other part of it, which is a personnel matter. So there's just different ways to address a complaint. Internal affairs, we have our internal affairs, which, if it goes to that step, it's it calls for, I'm the one that would call for an inquiry in reference to what occurred and was it any misconduct. But our citizen complaint form is picked up here at the police department, and the contact would be our front admin secretary or Alexis. And I think the practice has been around, and it's a good practice for us because we don't get frivolous complaints from the public as far as, you know, if we were to put them out into the public, more complaints would come in. So I don't know if, you know, like they had stated that some people are afraid to come to the police department.
Yeah, Chief, maybe you did mention internal investigations a little bit. Maybe just since this is a public meeting and people can watch this video later, maybe just talk a little bit about how something, you know, what type of thing would rise to that level and how that's actually handled as an investigation. Because I would like the public to know that there actually is a procedure. If they do make a complaint and it looks like it's actually a serious complaint that should be investigated, how that actually happens.
So there's a process into the internal affairs investigation, how it gets there. We will send the complaint up to internal affairs, and they'll do an inquiry on it into the incident. They'll do a quick inquiry and they'll bring it down to me, and they'll say, yes, this was sustained or it was unfounded. And at that time, if it was sustained after she's done her inquiry, I will assign it to someone to look at it and then see, merge together the violations and be able to say yes. And then they bring me their recommendation if it's going to be a suspension, a written reprimand, or so we have a threshold between a verbal from our supervisors to a written reprimand, and then it becomes suspension, demotion, and termination. So there's a threshold on what we see in between our, you know, the disciplinary action that occurs here at the Las Vegas Police Department. We have category 1 offenses, we have category 2 offenses, and we have category 3 offenses that are dealt with. I think a lot of your category 1s are sometimes verbal, right? You were late to work, don't do it again, or something like that. Category 2s are you were late on your reports, or you did something and they get a written reprimand and sometimes suspension. Category 3s are suspension, demotion, termination. It just depends on how you what type of conduct was committed, just misconduct.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that, because I'd like the public to know that there actually is a procedure and process in place that is kind of layered depending on the nature of the complaint and whether or not there's further investigation warranted, and if the investigation finds that there are some issues, that those issues can actually be acted upon in quite a serious way.
And if it's a serious misconduct where I call for a suspension or demotion or reprimand, we send out a letter to that complainant and say it's been taken care of because it's a personnel matter, and we don't share what type of discipline was given out. And that's, that I think some people think that they should know that Officer A received a suspension for 20 hours in reference to a category 3 offense or whatever, and it becomes a personnel matter. So we're sharing personnel matters, and we don't want to do that. I know they're trying to do that in Albuquerque, and District Attorney Raul Torres is fighting for that. And so it's a personnel matter when we start looking into disciplinary action and things like that.
Yeah, and I should mention, again, just for the public, that in government issues that have to do with personnel matters are almost always by default private. So I think that only in extraordinary cases, might any of that information be released to the public. That's just standard state law, standard across states, all over the country, actually. So if anybody had any, questions about that, that is the baseline. Personal matters will be handled. There's a process for doing that, but the actual outcome of these matters are confidential because they are personal matters. Yes, Lee.
Yes, you mentioned that incoming complaints, some are handled in one way, others are routed to internal affairs. What's the trigger for complaints to rise to internal affairs versus being handled less formally? Is there a written policy on that? You're muted.
Most of our complaints say they did a traffic stop, right? And there was misconduct by the officer. He yelled at he didn't treat the defendant with respect, or he yelled at me, or he did this, or whatever comes up. So they'll call us, they'll call our department, and we'll look at it. Say the deputy chief will look at it, and we'll have the officer bring his lapel in, and it might be a different story. The defendant might have been yelling at that officer. So there's different thresholds on what we send to IA. There is a policy on that. Our internal affairs policy and our discipline policy. I think he's muted.
Yeah, I think that we should also discuss, the other half of it is that, citizen reporting of crime, because I think there's, in many cases, also a reluctance on the part of general citizens to report actual crimes so that the police department can investigate them or look into them. So I know that right now there's again, Chief, maybe you can talk about what the standard procedures are for that, and maybe we can discuss a little bit other possibilities if someone actually is hesitant to walk into the police station and report a crime.
So most of our crimes are reported through our phone system, right? It's our 425-7504, or if it's an emergency, our 911 call. So most of those crimes are committed through that. We do have our Crime Stopper line up now. So if they want to remain anonymous and call our Crime Stopper line, they can call the Crime Stopper line. I believe that's 505-454-8884, I believe it is. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alexis, or if you could check for me real quick.
Yes, you're correct.
And we also want to, I know we don't, I'm not sure if we still have Crime Stoppers, but we would like to try to get it back with whoever, whatever group we can get to lead that, lead that objective for us. I don't think, I know the owner of the Realty on Grand Avenue, the one across the street from Del Norte, he used to be on it. And some older gentlemen used to be on it back in the day. So we haven't really heard of Crime Stoppers anymore. And I think it'd be great to try to get that Crime Stopper going again.
Yeah, and again, just for clarification, because Chief just mentioned that the Crime Stopper line, the 505-454-8883, I believe, is actually open so that a citizen can make an anonymous call in to report a crime. When the Chief is talking about Crime Stoppers, we'd like to bring it back. He's actually referring to there's a group of folks in town who used to run a Crime Stoppers organization, and I agree. As far as I know, I don't think it's still operating right now. But they would also assist people, and in some cases, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, they would actually offer a small reward in some cases for information that actually led to the solving of a crime. Is that correct?
Yes, it did. And while I was here in investigations, we used that Crime Stopper, that agency a lot. We used it many times where, it was very beneficial to the community and to the police department, actually.
Yeah, and I think that, we should acknowledge also as, both as a commission and also as a police department there, that there are times when somebody really does want to be anonymous for a variety of reasons. Either they're fearing for their lives or they don't want to get involved in some sort of a neighborhood dispute or something like that. So, but the information, if it's not reported, can't be acted on by the police. So part of our objective here in general is to sort of encourage more community and police communication and relations, including reporting of crime. And I think I brought up in a prior meeting that I know that even in my Joseph, we'll get your comment in just a second. But even in my neighborhood, there's a period of time where a lot of houses were being cased for burglaries, and a lot of people never reported the casing. So people actually got burglarized, and it may have been preventable if several people had said, "Hey, these strange people have been coming to my door and looking past me, and I think they're casing people's houses." So I think the reporting of crime is very crucial. Now, the other way to report crime, we'll get to in just a second, because I know that Joseph had a comment. Go ahead, Joseph.
Actually, I think Mary Helen's ahead of me.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mary Helen. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Okay. She's got her hand up.
I don't have my hand up.
Okay.
Oh, there's a little symbol on your screen, Mary Helen.
All right. Sorry.
Okay.
That's okay.
I'm unmuted and my hand is down.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, Chief, are you concerned about getting too many frivolous complaints, about having the complaint form more readily available? I mean, do you think you'd be swamped with busy work? Is that the concern?
I don't know if that would be my concern. I just think it would be a 50-50 chance, right, of what we're expecting. I don't know, we can do it, but again, it's a form for the Las Vegas Police Department. We don't want to be putting all types of forms out there in the community.
Maybe the city office and the library or something like that would be not too far out in the community, but somewhat in the community. Yeah,
we would look at that. We can look at that.
And just from my understanding of the situation in general, is it fair to ask you, for example, how many incidents get referred to internal affairs, like in a month or 6 months or a year? Is it a rare thing, or several times a month, or what?
Well, it depends on what the supervisors are dealing with out on the street, and how our officers are conducting themselves. I could tell you this month I've dealt with 2, and that was, it's a long process for internal affairs. An internal affair might last 3 months, 4 months. It just depends on what the investigation and where it leads us to.
Thanks.
It's a crime, isn't it, to submit a false report to the police knowingly?
Yes, it is. But also, when we take reports, we ask that right now they're not signing the document, I believe, but because it's on their computer. But in the past, we used to have them sign that report saying this is not a false document. So we might need to try to put something in the document stating it's not a false document for that police report.
Yes, my thought was if there was a notice on there quoting state law on filing false reports that might increase your level of confidence that, people won't be submitting frivolously. Just a thought.
And we do get false reports with calls for service sometimes. So it's a 50-50 chance that it would happen. Because again, citizens complaint form, if I don't put my name on it and I send it to you, I don't know, is it a true, complete report, information that you're sharing with us, or is it something that we're gonna go try to find?
Yeah, and I just want to add in general, I know that, Lee and I made a presentation at the city council and to the mayor yesterday, and the mayor, reiterated that one of his goals is to really focus on community policing. So I think one of the things too that I want to also bring up is that this body, this commission, is trying to let people know that there are protections for citizens if you report a crime, if you file a complaint against an officer. There's a whole formal procedure that goes along with that. It's not just some kind of a random thing. Because I would like it personally as a citizen if other citizens felt comfortable in dealing with with police officers and with the police department. And I think that and I think the chief makes a good point. If somebody just submits a complaint or a report of a supposed crime anonymously, we also don't want someone to be using the police department as a tool to harass other citizens, which sometimes happens. So I think part of the police, the job, in addition to enforcing the law, is to kind of filter out, this type of activity, which adds an extra burden to our already, understaffed police department, right? So, but I think that the more comfortable people feel legitimately reporting something to the police, the better it will be overall over time. And it might take us a while to get to that point, but I think that every little thing that we do to help in that direction will be helpful to the larger problem, because we definitely do want crimes reported. So anyway, and just one other thing I just want to mention, because we talked about Crime Stoppers. There are cases where somebody needs to report a serious crime and they're literally afraid for their life, or they're afraid of retaliation. I think Crime Stoppers was a very good format for doing that anonymously. So you could report a serious crime and not have to worry about retaliation. So as far as the Crime Stoppers group, I'm just going to mention here that we might want to put that on a future agenda to look into again to see if we can actually revive that. And the question I had on that for you, Chief, was when Crime Stoppers existed and was functioning in this town, was it actually funded by through some outside source? How was that funded? How are the rewards funded, for example?
I believe they used to do fundraisers, and I'm not sure if the city used to, but we could get in talks with somebody at the city and see if they would like to try to help us organize that.
Okay, yeah, and I had a specific question for Mary Helen on that topic as well. Do you have any thoughts on the Crime Stoppers organization or initiative?
Well, I think that as far as getting important information that a person wants to report, it's a good idea. I don't know how it was funded, and I would ask Chief Crespin, well, what happens when you call the number today? If you call
our communication specialist answers it, should answer it.
And so then is that information, what happens to that information? Somebody calls up and says, I saw something, or this is happening at this address, and then what happens?
That information is put into a book, and then the investigation section or officers check that book.
And then how often is that?
It should be every day.
Well, that's good to know. Well, generally, I think it's a good idea to have. And going back with what Dr. Whiteman was saying earlier about about putting reports out, I think that it's as Kimberly Blea said earlier, and it applies to everything. It's a balancing, because on the one hand, we want to encourage people to feel free to make a legitimate complaint. On the other hand, we don't want to make it so easy that any internet troll can just start sending out stuff just to cause problems. So it seems to me that it needs to be, somewhat easy to get the complaint form, but there needs to be a sufficient screening process so that people employees aren't unfairly targeted.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the internet troll thing, Mary Helen. That's actually really important. And I think it kind of ties back to what Lee was asking about a few minutes ago regarding actually posting a statement that says filing a false report is a crime. Because at least that would, it's a light, very, very easy, light thing to do, but at least it would make some people think a little bit before they hit that send button, or make that call or fill out the form. So I think that disclaimer, it's not really a disclaimer, it's more of like a little warning actually, but I think it would be helpful. And I think in a weird way, it would make people who actually are reporting legitimate things also feel more comfortable. I mean, it's counterintuitive, but I think that it helps remind people that there's a full process for accommodating either complaints against officers or reports of crime. It's not just an arbitrary thing that happens. There's a whole process behind, the call or the report that, exists. Not everybody's aware of what that process is, which is part of what this group is for. Even these discussions we're having that anybody in the community can watch, I'm hoping will be helpful and educational for people. But that's notwithstanding any kind of an educational program we could do as a whole separate initiative. And of course, I think at this point I should mention, we have been talking about a survey as well. And I think that, which is actually coming up as the next item. But I think the survey will help in that educational regard as well. So, so I'll just say at this point, is there any further discussion at this moment about either filing complaints against police officers or citizens filing reports? I mean, right now we're kind of getting, the baseline information out and also brainstorming a little bit, but is there any other comments before we move on to the next agenda item? Yes, Eric. Can you hear me? Eric, did you raise your hand?
Good afternoon, Roy. Yes, I did.
Okay.
For those who, let me turn my camera on just so folks can see who I am.
Yes.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Eric Padilla. I'm a major with the Las Vegas Police Department. And it's just some points of clarification from my end on some of the reporting and some of the citizens' complaints. The Las Vegas Police Department does take all complaints for our policy, either the phone or an in-person formal complaint. We do take the informal as well from people who call in over the phone or what have you, or email or whatever. We do take all complaints that way, and we have an in-house complaint form, which if a dispatcher takes a complaint because there's not a supervisor available or it's over the weekend when there's not command staff might not be available, and just some of the questions that Lee had as far as when it goes to IA, when the complaints come in and they reach a level that an officer may have committed a criminal act, that's when the chief would send that inquiry to the internal affairs investigator or a commander saying, look into this issue. If it reaches to the level of policy violations or a criminal offense, such as maybe an individual was arrested and they felt that the officer used an unreasonable amount of force on somebody, the chief would look into that and say, okay, the investigator did the inquiry and said, hey, chief, yes, we need to look into this. So chief would say, go ahead, open up a full IA and look into this matter, investigate fully. The Crime Stopper is a private entity, which a lot of how the police department helped fund that was through plea and disposition from court cases. If the defendant pled guilty, whatever the court judge decided, you're going to pay a fine of $500. You're going to donate to Crime Stoppers. Our last point of contact, which she has since retired, was Commander Pamela Sandoval. She's been gone it's been about a year now, and the last point of contact, he was a former chief here and has since passed, Montoya, Chief Montoya, and his daughter, I don't remember her name, but she was running that. But that doesn't mean that anybody still cannot call that Crime Stopper line, report an incident to us, and we will still look into it. And if it's something that an individual that wants to remain anonymous and it's of urgent, the dispatcher will create a call and send an officer right away. So, does anybody have any questions? Anything else?
No, I don't have a question, Major Padilla, but I think that was a very helpful, helpful information and a good description. And I just want to clarify one last point. The actual Crime Stoppers numbers that we gave out earlier, the 888, number, that's separate from the normal, if you're just calling into the PD for an emergency call or a non-emergency call, correct? That's actually a third number that you could call.
Correct. It's a private unrecorded line, because it's unrecorded because people, if they want to remain anonymous and somebody does an IPRA request, can request that line or that conversation. So it should be an unrecorded line because of that line should be anonymous.
Okay, good. Well, one of the things we can do is is publicize that number as well. And in fact, that may be something that we could add at the bottom as kind of a footer on the survey, so that people have all three of the, obviously 911, everybody knows that, but the non-emergency line and the anonymous Crime Stoppers line. So people know they have three options if they're going to contact the PD over the phone. Okay, are there any other questions for Major Padilla or any other comments before we move on to the next agenda item?
The only comment I have is I will make sure that is publicize the number for the Crime Stoppers, but I also put in the chat just if anyone needed it now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Roy, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. So let's move on to the next agenda item, which is the discussion on the survey. I know that Alexis sent out the actual survey questions, and everybody's had a chance to look at those. Those are also posted in the public minutes, so that anybody from the public can access those and look at them as well. Just to reiterate, the purpose of the survey is for the police department to get information from the citizens on how they view the police department and their, basically the job they're doing and how comfortable they feel with the department, etc. So on that note, I know that was also sent out as part of the agenda, thanks to Alexis. So did anyone have any comments on these specific questions, first of all? And secondly, are there any questions that anyone thinks we're missing that we should add to the survey? Yes, I see. Mary Helen, you have a hand raised.
I do have my hand up. I thought that they were pretty good. The only thing that I would add, and I'm sure that this was brought up at the last meeting, was that there should be a little space at the end for any other comments you wish to share. In other words, they can type it in or print it in and fill that in that addresses some issue that we haven't thought of, or maybe they didn't feel was sufficiently addressed. That's what I think.
Okay, yeah, great comment. Yeah, I agree with that. If in the electronic form of the survey, we can add that as a text field at the end. Do you have any other additional comments you'd like to make? And if it's a form that's actually, for any reason, a printed form that somebody would fill in, we can also just leave a space at the end of it. Okay, good. Are there any other thoughts or comments on these specific questions or additional questions? Yeah.
I saw one thing on here. Well, are we going to be targeting 17 years and younger?
Oh, that's something that we had discussed. I think, Kimberly, you're going to look at that based on how the university handles these things. Do you have any thoughts or findings on that?
Yeah, what I can tell you is that through any type of survey or data collection really that is administered to people under the age of 18, there's a requirement for parental consent. And so if we wanted to collect survey information from individuals under the age of 18, we would have to build in a parental consent aspect of that, just to ensure that we're not collecting data from any minors who do not have parental permission. It's possible, but that would just be the additional caveat. And I guess what I would ask everyone to consider is the information that the youth might be able to provide, is that helpful, beneficial? Is it something that we believe would help inform the police department's work and efforts in the community? Or is it something perhaps that might add a little bit of additional information, but would not necessarily be worthwhile the additional time, effort, and resources into getting parental consent as well?
Yeah, maybe before Major Padilla and the Chief answers that question, I should point out, and I know that Dr. Blair already knows this, but if you're doing a digital form, and if it's on a website or anything like that, in order to get parental consent, it adds a little bit of complexity, whereas on a printed form, it's fairly easy. You could have a separate signature field there where somebody can write in, I am the parent, this is my name, here's my signature. But on a digital form, you have to have some way to have a digital signature, which might typically be done through a PDF or something like that, which adds a layer of complexity and will probably reduce the amount of response we get. So I just wanted to put in that little context, and then maybe Major Padilla and Chief Crespin, maybe you can address your thoughts on that. Kimberly's question.
So I think that I would want to pass on the 17 or younger for now. And once school starts, maybe we can go out to the schools and do a survey on our own through the schools, just working with the schools and trying to get a survey in that way. Some feedback from that. I think our community right now is the adult. We haven't had many interaction with juvenile, but I think once we get into the schools and able to communicate with them, I think that's when we would try to get that survey going on that side.
Mary Helen, you had your hand up.
Yes, I agree with you, Roy, that we shouldn't do any, well, I actually agree with everybody, but I think that we shouldn't do anything to make it more complicated. My suggestion would be a hybrid of the comments that we've already had, and that is that we put a disclaimer at the top. You have to be 18 years or old to answer this, and then and not worry about getting notaries and other complications, because that's going to reduce the number of comments. And if they're going to be anonymous anyway, we don't know if they're 18 or not, or if their parents are there. And then the follow-up, I think, is that Chief Crespin just brought up, I think is a really great idea, is that in conjunction with the two high schools, possibly the mid-school, is to have a survey later on when the in-person school starts up. possibly with the civics class or the government class or, the health education class or something like that. I just don't want, my main concern is that we're going to have under-reporting or under-responding in this survey, and I don't want to make it more complicated.
Okay, so I think both Eric and Kimberly have their hand up, but Kimberly, why don't you go ahead first?
Sure. I was just going to add that there's a number of additional surveys that are regularly administered with youth. They're obviously not specific to the police department's interaction with the youth, but rather, thank you, Rico, but rather more focused on trends and behaviors. And I think there's that data out there already that could help support and inform the work that the police department does specifically to engage with our youth. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can draw upon the information and the data that already exists and then target, based on the needs that exist in the school is another way of approaching it and looking at it as well.
Okay, thank you. And Major Padilla, you had your hand up as well.
I agree with Mary Helen. The main issue is not to make it as complicated as possible and see what our target number of surveys are going to be. And if we have, like it's been stated, how we have no tool to see how if this individual is a minor or what, but whenever we go based, and then when we screen these surveys and we're getting the majority of the same responses, I think that's going to be our target there. That if we had 1,000 surveys go out and 800 are coming back pretty much with the same thing, then that's where we take our measurements from. But I think that it's definitely good, I agree with Chief Crispin, is to get into the schools and the younger age population, because they do have a big voice. And if they don't get a voice like that, they're going to look at other means and they say, we're not included in this, we have a voice ourselves. They'll turn to social media and those ways. But I think that it's important that we target that, and we might get a bigger response from the youth than we do the adults. So, but I think it's very hard to gauge on that part, and I think we need to, or at the pleasure of the board, is if you already don't have a target number of how many surveys are going out, and what's the target number you're looking at to get your stats and your data you need.
Yeah, I think that the idea of doing the survey for youth in the schools makes a huge amount of sense. As far as the target number, I know that we are going to put this out to the entire community, and our target number for responses, if we can pull it off, is actually, Dr. Blake can confirm this, I think 20%. So if we can get 15% or 22%, I think we'd all be really, really happy. But that is our target. We'd like to make this easy as possible to get as many responses as we can. Plus, I think there's two things I want to mention for the public or anyone who might be viewing this on YouTube later. This is a first step, actually, in generating more community police dialogue, which is usually helpful. And secondly, I think that we are talking about doing this survey periodically. So this is not one time and then it's done, we never do it again. What we want to do is actually create a baseline with the responses and the analytics, and then do it again, and then do it again, and do it again. So periodically, and we haven't talked about what the period is, whether it's quarterly or twice a year or once a year or whatever, but we will do this repeatedly. And that'll also give us a chance, it'll give the city and the city council and the mayor, the police department, a chance to see how things are progressing as well. So for anybody in the public watching this, we do intend to do this more than once, but we want as much community participation as possible every time we do it, so we can actually see what the trends are.
If I can, I just wanted to include that we do have the Youth Commission who we could probably collaborate with and see how they would look at the survey. I know we have some that are 18 and over on that Youth Commission. So.
Okay, no, that sounds good. I think all these avenues will be very, very helpful. And I'm actually very excited about getting this pulled together and out there. I think it'll be really, really helpful. So are there any other thoughts or questions about the survey at this time? And I should mention one thing too. At the city council meeting last night, when Lee and I were talking to the mayor and the council, I think that because we're still kind of in a holding mode where we're waiting for them to kind of think this through and produce an ordinance that would allow us to define our mission and our goals and purpose and all that stuff, we're going to refrain from actually voting or taking actions. But that doesn't mean we can't continue to refine the survey and figure out all the methods that we're going to use to get it out there. All that means is that we're going to kind of refrain from taking official votes on matters that would actually impact the public at this point. But with that in mind, are there any other thoughts or comments on the survey at this point? Yes, Mary Helen.
How soon do you think that we'll be able to get this out? And I'm assuming we're going to send it out with the utility bills, maybe? We had that discussion once.
We talked about some different options. Maybe Dr. Blake can address this a little bit more. I think that we're looking to put the information out as widely as possible through utility bills, through the 311 service, through the city website, the police department Facebook page, etc. I think that the consensus, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is that as much as possible, we should just drive people to a web page with the survey on it, because it'll be quickest and easiest for everybody to just fill it out online. But knowing that not everybody, we have a lot of elderly people in the community, not everybody has, a big screen or computer where they can do this. We do also want to make it available as a printed piece that someone can just fill in. So as far as where do we distribute the printed version, I think that's more the bigger question, because that's logistically more complicated. So does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Roy, if I can, I will just add that I think we can come up with a plan when we know a little bit more when we're ready. And I'm kind of thinking, for really kind of just saturate the community, so to speak, through various modalities to include, like you said, social media, a link on utility bills. But I'm even thinking, in surveys that I've been a part of administering in the community, is even, going to the flea market, for example, putting a table up outside of Walmart or Lowe's, or at, a track meet, so to speak, and just really trying to ensure that we're looking at different populations of the community. Because obviously, I'll say as an example, it would be very easy for me to send out a link to, my colleagues and my contacts and networks of people who will likely respond to the survey and who will be able to, do it in an online format. But we also have to look at the survey and who's the population that we're missing. And so really looking at it in that regards and just trying to identify, okay, we have a good, and we could even look at it kind of from like a demographic, aspect as well. And I speak specifically to age, for example. You can, go to the flea market. We can work with this Wanda at the senior center, for example, to get responses from the seniors. We can, go to the farmers market. Just looking at it in a variety of different ways, in everywhere in our community, right? And kind of just my thought would be to kind of just saturate it. People are going to do it online on a link on social media. They'll do it, right? If I send out a link, people will do it. But we have to also be thinking about those who may not access it, because we also want, those individuals to share with us their perspectives as well. So those are some initial thoughts and ideas that I have about the distribution of the survey that I think we could definitely we could definitely think of more ideas as well.
Yeah, actually, I really love like working with the senior center, and maybe there's other organizations we can think of that have specific audiences that we can work with. I also like the idea of setting up a table in front of Walmart or Lowe's or someplace like that, so that as people are walking in or walking out, they would have an opportunity to either fill it in right on the spot or pick one up. And of course, we can have printed versions for those who want to pick one up at the city offices. And maybe the university, Donnelly Library and the library in Carnegie Park, etc. Yeah, I agree. I think the more widely we can distribute the printed version for those who are not computer savvy, the better. Mary Helen, did you want to say something else, or?
I agree with that and what Dr. Blea said. Although I think that maybe with older populations that they might respond to the utility bills. It seems like that's an awful lot of paper and to go out that may or may not come back. Whereas online, we're going to more likely to get a response and to get a broader response. Her idea of saturation, I think, is the word that I've keyed into. And I think we could even put up a notice, okay, we're going to do this, and here's our saturation weekends. We're going to be at Walmart. We could also, contact, let's say, Alta Vista Hospital and the behavioral health and say that we're going to set up a booth there just to focus on populations, just to make sure that we get as broad saturation as possible.
Okay, good. Yeah,
if I can real quick, we're looking at the 4th of July fiestas. The fiestas are going to happen on the Plaza Park, so we can set up a booth there. We have Friday Al Frescos, who's bringing about average of 300 people a Friday. So those are two areas, maybe setting up a computer or two computers or even just doing them on paper. So, those are two areas we could set up a tent. We have our police tent. I don't know. We used to have one. I'm sure we still do somewhere. But,
yeah, I think events, community events are also a really great idea. I love that. So, okay, well, I think that what we can do at this point is we should just continue to brainstorm on how to saturate this throughout the community, is to use Dr. Blae's word. And all these are great ideas, and I think we should do as many of these as possible, because when we redo it again, like in quarterly or every half year or whatever, people will sort of be used to the idea that we're doing a survey regularly and that we will be in front of Walmart, or you can't get this at the city or online. So I think one of the questions that, since Mary Helen brought this up twice, I don't know if anyone has an answer, but if we send this out through utility bills, can we actually send out a paper version of the whole survey, or would it just be a marketing thing that says, take the survey and go to this link? What does everybody think about that?
You have enough space on the back of the utility bill. We need to look at how many questions will fit on the back of the utility bill and still be readable. I think that's where we'd end up getting our information printed, unless we could do it with an insert, and we need to have that conversation, I think, with Maria Gilvari. And I cannot hear you, sir.
I'm sorry. It used to be with the optic. I mean, another idea is to actually put this in as an insert in the optic. Do you think that that's possible?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, good. I think we're going to end up doing a good job getting this out to the public. And that's very exciting. Okay, so if there's no other comments or questions about the survey itself, let's move on to the last discussion item before we adjourn. We're coming up on 4:22 now. I can give a little report, and Lee, feel free to jump in and give your thoughts as well. I know that Lee and I did make a request of the City Council and the Mayor last night, to actually put together an ordinance regarding this commission and its purpose and its duties, et cetera, so that we can formulate our own mission and our own, in other words, be very clear about what we're doing and why we're doing it. I know that the mayor said that the city council is already starting to work on that ordinance, which is fantastic. And the mayor also said at that meeting last night that he would try to make our next police commission meeting next month. So with the city council, between the city council and the mayor and us, I think there's probably going to be a little back and forth on discussion about the ordinance and what it should include and not include. And I think that if the mayor's here joining this call and maybe other city councilors, it would be a really good thing because I think we can accomplish a lot quickly. They can clarify what they need and what they would like to see, and then we can move forward from there. But as of right now, I think we should just put a pause on any mission and bylaws until we get the actual official ordinance from the city council, which we should have relatively soon. I mean, if the mayor's at our next meeting, who knows, it might happen by the meeting after that. I know they would have to vote on it themselves, so it might be 2 meetings after that. But in any way, at least it's in progress. And anyone in the public who's watching this, you can know that it is in progress. We are moving on this. Lee, did you have any other thoughts or comments?
You've covered it in large part, and I'm just going to say that for the time being, I think that further exploration of our mission and bylaws in the absence of that ordinance it's just going to be a time muncher. I mean, there's no way to know if what we're going to come up with is worthwhile. So I would suggest we table it until such time as we have the ordinance in hand and we can proceed with the information that we need.
Yeah, I agree, because it wouldn't be worthwhile for us to come up with a bunch of ideas that the city council actually doesn't need or want. So I agree. We'll just table that for now, which means Alexis, on the next agenda, we should actually remove temporarily mission bylaw under discussion items. Okay, one last thing I want to mention before we close is that I just want to thank Alexis. She's been doing a great job. She's been doing a lot of work in taking notes, putting together our minutes, and putting together the agenda and actually posting them per rules according to the district attorney's office, so that we're in compliance with Open Meetings Act. I just wanted to thank her for that because it can get a little complicated, but I think we're starting to get it down. So probably by next month, the DA will be totally happy with us, and we'll be in full compliance with everything. So, but on that note, I just want to say, and then I'll get your comment, Joseph. If you have any items specific to the agenda, please send them directly to Alexis so that she can get them on the agenda. And she does send out minutes and stuff for us to look at before she posts them publicly. So if you look at the minutes and you think something was missed or whatever, please give that information to Alexis as soon as humanly possible so she can update that, and we're not wasting her time either. Anyway, yes, Joseph, you had a comment.
Is the next meeting canceled?
Good question, Alexis. That's a question for Alexis.
No, actually, I was trying to schedule all of them at one time, every third Thursday of the month. But it didn't work, so I had to delete it. But I'll put it back up in time.
Yeah, it can be confusing because I know a lot of calendar programs, if you change the date of something, it sends out a cancellation notice and everyone gets confused, like the whole meeting's been canceled when actually all you're doing is changing the date. So we will agree at this meeting that we will have a meeting next month on the third Thursday at the same time. And hopefully I'll be able to join on time instead of a little bit late as I did today. But
so I'm going to throw a wrench in here real quick.
Yes.
The council voted on us going back to in-person meetings.
That's right.
So these meetings will be held at the chamber at the council chambers at the city of Las Vegas. And I know they didn't consult with anybody, so I don't know if you do want to have a meeting. The next meeting will have to be in person. That's what they've called for us to do. So I'm trying to get our system fixed here with our IT so we can have our meetings here at the police department, because due to the Opens Meeting Act, we have to be in compliance and they've asked to keep it on YouTube. So it'll still be aired on YouTube. But next meeting will be in person at the council chambers.
So is there anybody on this commission that will have any kind of an issue or problem with meeting in person at the council chambers next month?
I'm fine with it.
I just have a question. When is the next meeting scheduled for, Alexis?
June 4th.
Sorry, I just checked. June the 17th, I believe. Let me just.
Okay, that's what I show as the third Thursday as well. I don't have any problems with meeting in person myself, but I just want to let you all know that I won't, it's likely I won't be able to attend the next meeting. We're planning, yep, just the next meeting in June. We're planning to be out of town.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Joseph, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I also expect to be out of town, but I could attend the meeting through my computer wherever I am, if that's an option.
Or by phone, whichever.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that, if you're able to do that, Joseph, that would be great. And I think that ultimately, if we can control the, the IT a little bit, or the technology, I think it's also helpful for some people to attend, the public to attend these meetings over a computer as opposed to in person. So I think in the spirit of keeping what we're doing as open and inclusive as possible, if we can do both, kind of a hybrid thing, that's ideal. But I know that's you need to have a big screen and you need to have a webcam. I mean, I can talk to you about that, Chief. I mean, it's not rocket science, but it is kind of something we'd have to make sure we actually have that equipment on hand. But for the next meeting, we'll just agree we'll meet in the city council chambers. Joseph, if you can join by phone or by computer, that would be great. And then we'll kind of take it from there to see what's possible.
So we stayed with our schedule the third Thursday of every month. They have to accommodate all the commissions and boards. So, I mean, there's like 20 some. So we will stay with our time and date. One of the things that I'm trying to get our IT to come in and see what we have to do to fix our system here so we could have our meetings here.
Right. And for what it's worth, I mean, this was the city council's call.
Yes.
So it's not discretionary on our part in terms of, are we going to meet in person? I would suggest that we pretty much have to go with a scheduled time because of notification to the public and issues surrounding that. If we don't have a quorum, we all get to go home. But let's aim for that.
Yeah. Okay. So Alexis, I mean, I think that, we're just going to go for the third Thursday at the city council chambers, and hopefully that'll work out in terms of all the other boards and commissions that have to be juggled. But Chief, you're pretty confident that we have that third Thursday, 3 o'clock open?
Yes, that's our schedule.
Okay, perfect. So again, please be mindful of Alexis and her efforts, and anything for the agenda, please send it directly to her ASAP. Alexis, we'll try not to wait till the last second to send you things, because she has to get the agenda up 10 days ahead of time and get the minutes up 10 days after this meeting. So it's basically like a rotating 2-week kind of thing. So the sooner you can get that to her, the easier it'll be for her to process that and get that up for us. Okay, any other last comments before we close the meeting?
You've put yourself on mute, Roy.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move to adjourn.
I'm sorry.
I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn and a second. Do we have, all those in favor say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Have a good weekend.
Okay.